everybody.
Hi, friends. Well, from beautiful Salt Lake City, Utah.
It's Thank God I'm Atheist.
The podcast.
I'm Frank Feldman.
And I'm Dan Beecher.
And coming up on the show today, Dan, a new video game, or at least it's new to us, got us thinking about some stuff, because some details about the game.
Starfield. For those of you who want to get excited about it, or like not, I don't know. It apparently is a bit of a lightning rod in terms of like people loving and or hating it.
Oh, well, okay. Well,
but it has a religious element to it that we wanted to talk about, so we'll get to that, and
we will later on in the show. First, there's some stuff that happened this week in the world, Dan.
Out there in the world, that's where stuff happens.
Including an announcement from the U.S. federal government about how they're going to be processing some green card applications.
And the green card, for those of you who don't know, who don't remember the movie with Gerard Depardieu, this is the sort of permanent residence card that makes it legal for you to stay in this country for extended periods of time,
indefinitely,
as a non citizen.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people come to the United States for work, right?
Sure.
And one of those groups, Dan, are religious leaders, right?
Ew.
People coming to set up.
Why? Because
we have a lot of immigrants, say, from like Mexico.
Sure.
And the people immigrating from Mexico, by and large, are coming for work, right? But not necessarily, these aren't religious leaders that are coming, right? Who are crossing the border into the country. So they need religious leaders from their own culture and traditions and whatnot to come over to guide the flock here, Dan.
Okay.
Doesn't that make sense?
I guess. I don't like it.
So
we have enough religion here. Let's not import anymore.
Yeah, no, we are importing it, Dan. And but a change at the U.S. Immigration's office, whatever it's called, the State Department, has announced that for nearly 7 years, it has been placing tens of thousands of applications for neglected and abused minors from Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador into the wrong category.
Okay.
And that they should actually be over in the general queue with the clergy that are applying for green cards. Now, what their absence in these 7 years has meant is that clergy have had I don't know if it is the general queue, but it's into the same queue as the clergy. What this has meant, though, is that clergy for the past 7 years have basically had a fast track to getting green cards because there was nobody else there in their queue. And so, and that's how immigration handles this, is they put people in different queues and then they work those queues. And some of the queues are insane. One of the longest one is the category for married Mexican children of U.S. citizens. They are currently only processing applications that were filed before March 1998. That's where they're at on that queue, Dan. Okay.
Holy shit.
So
that's a hell of a line.
Yeah. When people say that U.S. immigration is totally fucked up and a mess, they aren't wrong, right? It is totally screwy.
There is a question of like, what is the solution? Like quintuple the funding for stuff and like throw a whole bunch more judges and stuff at the border, versus the other possible solution, which is just, apparently shoot everybody at the border or whatever it is that the far right wants.
Right.
To have done.
Let's not do that one.
I vote against that.
That's the one we should not do. So this means that there are thousands of faith leaders from abroad currently working in the United States who are about to have their visas that they're currently on expire before the green card, which they would have been getting like right away, right? They're not going to be getting that green card. And so thousands of faith leaders from around the world are going to be going back to wherever they came from because they're not going to have permission to stay in the United States. And the consequence of this is that there are a lot of churches that are going to be leaderless. Actually, a lot of them may actually close because they won't be able to find a new leader. And there's some very interesting little things that end up happening. Like it's put religious orders that have vows of poverty into a really weird situation
where they actually have to follow through on it.
So Catholic nuns and Buddhist monks are being hit especially hard, according to this article, because most other employment visa categories require employers to show they're paying foreign workers prevailing wages. Since they're getting no wages, they don't qualify for those visas. Right.
Okay.
And so there's all these different categories of religious folk in the U.S. who are currently in the U.S. who are going to be asked to please leave.
Oh my gosh.
Or else they will be deported.
It's so rare that you get good news about immigration here in the United States. But the deportation of religious leaders seems great to me.
Yeah.
I am so fine with it.
Yeah. And not just religious leaders, also workers, right? Like the non-paid monks and nuns. Yeah. So, this is obviously going to be very disruptive for a lot of people. Yeah. And my heart goes out to them that they had a track that they were on, and all of a sudden the immigration service decides to, throw a wrench in their plans. But at the same time, I don't really care about this category getting screwed.
No. The thing is, I'm actually fine with religious leaders coming in, serving, their communities. That's actually fine with me, but they should not be at the front of the line for
correct. And it sounds like
this
has been
all that stuff.
Yeah. And so it sounds like this has been addressed, and they're in line just like everybody else at this point.
Yeah. We should be, there are priorities. There are groups that we should definitely be prioritizing. But they're not at the top of that list.
Yeah, me. Absolutely. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to take us around the world to Greece. Ooh. I was just there a couple months ago.
Yeah.
Where I didn't know this, but apparently they have required religious education in their public schooling system. As a matter of fact, the full name of the ministry that is in charge of this is the Ministry of Education, Religious Affairs, and Sports.
Oh, okay.
That's a hell of a ministry. But that is how deeply entwined the concept of religion and education are in the minds of the Greek.
And sports.
And sports. Sports are pretty important. The Greeks kind of invented sport. Or at least of the sport that we now still do, the oldest ones were all sort of ancient Greek ones. Wrestling and whatnot.
Yeah. Baseball. Baseball.
Running for ungodly amounts of time and distance. They invented that for no good reason. Or at least they invented the competitive version of it.
Sport.
The necessity version of it has been around for much longer. And
sports has come a long way, I suppose.
Yeah. I'm still confused about sports.
Throwing discuses.
Yeah. You bet. Yeah, Aristotle was chucking discuses. We're like
jumping over things.
Or leaping this and or that. Okay, so anyway, 90% of Greece is identifies as Orthodox Christian. So it is a state religion. It is very much sort of part of the fabric of the culture there. Although only 17% actually attend weekly church.
Okay,
that tracks. But it is definitely like Orthodox Christianity it's in their constitution as the quote prevailing religion of Greece. Whatever that means. If there is a sport where the religions go against each other, it will prevail. So they do have religious classes starting in grade 3 and going all the way through high school.
Oh my God.
There's religion classes, which are very much sort of Orthodox Christian oriented. Now you can get an exemption if you are not Orthodox Christian. If you are Jewish, if you are Muslim, if you are an atheist, you can get an exemption and not have to go.
So you don't have to substitute it with something else. You just get to like skip it.
Well, they're working on what they substitute it with.
Oh, okay.
But as of now, I don't know what they do. I know that they haven't found. There's talk of them coming up with a class that's like sort of like ethics and values or some sort of weird like world religion class or something like that. But one that doesn't espouse a religion specifically. Yeah, right. As if they will. Anyway, but yeah, they grant about 10,500 exemptions annually now ish. I can't tell if that's high or low. It's about a population of about 10 million, 10.5 million. So, but how many of them are school kids? I couldn't do the math. Anyway, that's the number of exemptions that are granted, but the exemption process is problematic a lot because here's the thing: if you identify as Orthodox Christian, or if they identify you as Orthodox Christian, you have to go. These exemptions up until now have been exclusively for non-Christian Orthodox.
So you have to like start
students.
life as an atheist, right? Like you can't like just be in class and be like, "This is bullshit. I'm atheist." And get out of it.
No, apparently not. Although there has been a recent lawsuit that was brought by an atheist group, among others.
Yeah.
That basically is just saying like this is bullshit. First of all, like the original exemptions, you had to say like I'm Jewish and that's why I don't want to do that. But it is, especially in Europe, they keenly are aware of the dangers of the state knowing everybody's religion. Like it's a violation of basic privacy. And also, yeah, like, it wasn't that long ago that that one of the states of Europe decided that they were just going to exterminate a whole bunch of people based solely on their religious heritage.
Right. Yeah.
So like people are, I think, understandably and a little skittish about the state like making them declare what their religion is, and not only that, making them like it makes you an outsider. Like to have to affirmatively say I am outside of this majority. And that's, right. And therefore I don't want to be a part of this. It makes you an outsider, and, kids are mean and teachers are mean, and like this can be a real problem.
Right. But they also might find out that the prevailing religion is not as prevailing as they thought at a certain point. Right. Like, I mean, I get it. Like it's I'm sure monolithic.
Yeah.
Right. At 90%, did you say?
Yeah, 90%.
Wow. Yeah.
That's pretty rough.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: Greece is part of the European Union, so they are. So the groups that were fighting this, they got a small win in Greece, but they're taking it actually to the European Court of Human Rights or something like that.
Okay.
Because the European Convention on Human Rights,
Right. Okay.
Because this is a problem. This is not an acceptable thing. So I think that's interesting. I think that because one of the things that's been happening, people apply for this exemption, and then the principal of the school goes and like looks into the kids' baptismal records and stuff. So it's a pretty deep invasion of privacy, and not at all cool.
Just get the class out of the schools. Problem solved.
I mean, it's kind of the only way to solve the problem.
Yeah.
We'll see what the European Union as a whole is pretty secular.
Yeah.
In nature. So I don't know what they're going to do. And will this cause are we looking toward Grexit because of it? Who knows?
Wow. I mean, Grexit. What a disaster that would be.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think,
as the British have found out for Greece, right? Like,
yeah, considering how much the EU has bailed Greece out
that's not
financial woes, I don't think that's going to happen.
That's not happening. Yeah.
It would be very interesting if they if the EU forced them to make some very real changes.
Well, I'm excited to see what happens.
Yeah.
All right, Dan. Another European story. This is an update of sorts. Actually, directly an update about the Denmark with this proposed Quran law, or Koranloven, as the Danes call it. We had our reaction to it, and just
remind
sort of
everybody
surprised.
what the proposed law was.
Denmark is proposing to make the burning of the Quran and other holy books illegal.
Right.
And so we thought that was silly. Not a great idea. Maybe instead, I think our stance, or at least mine, was just make the burning of all books illegal. But no, that's also not a good idea. But the public in Denmark is reacting fairly negatively to this proposed law. And artists, writers, intellectuals, journalists have come out in large numbers demanding the withdrawal of the bill, which they see as an attack on art, political expression, and freedom of the press, as well as an attack on free and democratic societies. The Justice Minister, Peter Hummelgaard, had promised, quote, surgical intervention with the law, pledging to protect freedom.
What does that mean?
Well, that it would be very precise, that it wasn't going to really affect free speech, right?
Right.
That it would be very, very, very surgically precise. It's only going to be about the Quran and other holy books. But these things have a way of, like, once you put the words down on paper for a new law, they have a way of, like, being able to be interpreted in various different ways. And maybe there's some inconsistencies within the law itself, which people have been pointing out. Anyway, he said, let's see, quote, we were expecting a hamster and we got a polar bear. That wasn't him. That was a judge by the name of Nina Paleza Bond, referring to, this break with tradition that Denmark has, protected freedom of expression very adamantly. A lot of people are saying it would basically be reinstating a law that they did have that banned blasphemy that was abolished in 2017, which is surprising that it was only that recent. So this is a discussion that is very recent on everybody's minds. They had priorities to protect expression. And now, because of protesters doing things like burning, tearing up the Quran and burning its pages out in front of, I think it was the Iranian embassy, and the reaction, the violent reaction that has happened in response to these acts of freedom of expression. Governments in Europe have been like trying to figure out how to solve this, right? How to prevent this from happening in the future. The problem is when you start why are you going after the people who are using a basic human right rather than denouncing and hopefully being able to go after the people who are responding with violence to something, to a non-violent act, right? Like,
to a symbolic act.
Correct.
Yeah. Literally the new law should be if someone responds like you're not allowed to respond non-symbolically to a symbolic act.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Your response must also be symbolic. If you move beyond that, then you're in trouble.
Yeah. Well, this law would actually even outlaw symbolic burnings of Qurans.
You can't do an animation of a Quran being burned.
You are not allowed to desecrate objects that are imitations of objects protected by the law. So
if you get,
somebody who has
an Amazon box and write the word Quran on it and then burn that. Oh my God. That would be outlawed. That would be really, really, really bad. But just to kind of, I thought this was from a government minister suggesting the Danish Iranian artist Firuza Bazrafkan, who was the one who was doing the shredding, right? This sort of speaks to maybe a little bit of a misunderstanding of art and expression, because here's a government minister making the suggestion maybe to paint or write or sculpt something in stone instead. Like you don't suggest the medium to an artist or to a somebody who's protesting, right? Right.
Maybe if there are other ways, perhaps you could express yourself. That, why not sculpt something, artist?
Yeah, because when someone does a visual image that is to do with Islam, that goes over so well also.
Yeah. Good drawings Lord. And figurines were oh God, I can't even make heads or tails of this law, actually.
It's absurd. Yeah, you're right. They're regulating all of the wrong parts of this.
Yeah.
It is just like you regulate the disproportional and absurd response.
Correct.
You don't regulate the non-problematic, hurtful, but still just like can you draft a law that just says grow up and stop, don't worry about it, like address the ideas, not the fucking act. Anyway, all right. Well, I'm going to take us to a poll that was done. This is interesting. This was done by our local Deseret News.
Oh.
But it's a nationwide poll.
Really?
It was done it was conducted by a group called Harris X. I don't know what that is. It sounds nefarious, but I assume that this poll was fine.
Okay.
A nationwide poll, and all they were asking is the question is they mentioned different political figures here in the United States and asked, is this person a person of faith?
Oh.
That's the entire thing. Who they asked about people like Joe Biden and Donald Trump. They asked about Mittens Romney, Mike Pence, a whole bunch of people.
Right.
And just asked, do you think this person is a person of faith?
Not like rank their faith level. Just are they a person of faith?
Just are they a person of faith?
Okay. All right.
Now, if I asked you, Franklin, is Donald Trump a person of faith? How would you respond to that?
Is there like a negative no? Like,
like, how do you go beyond no? If you say no, then you are like the majority of Democrats and independents.
Right.
Only 14% of Democrats and 19% of independents see Donald Trump as a person of faith, but 53% of Republicans. Actually, that seems maybe a little low to me, but 53% of Republicans do see Donald Trump as a person of faith.
Fools.
I mean, he says it. He definitely says he talks about Jesus and whatever, and then all of his like mouthpieces go around talking about how he's a man of faith and blah 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 blah.
And he likes to quote 2 Corinthians, right?
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, and literally that was the only time he quoted a Bible verse because everybody made fun of him. And then when he was asked, what's your favorite Bible verse? He was like, oh, I like all of them. Pretty much everything. The whole Bible. I don't know. And he has no idea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. He's never even touched a Bible.
No, there's a picture of him holding one upside down in front of
that's
church.
Right. Holding it upside down in front of a church. Anyway, so that's interesting, 53%. But in total, I guess, among Republicans, 53% thought that he was a person of faith. That makes him, they think that he's more a person of faith than Joe Biden or Mitt Romney.
Oh, that's just ludicrous. That's just so dumb. Joe Biden, who is demonstrably and obviously very Catholic,
has talked about it incessantly since the beginning of his political career back in 1832.
It's obviously a very important part of his life. Yeah, and who he is. I do not believe for a minute that, or I would not believe for a minute that Joe Biden is just sort of faking it for the cameras, right? Whereas
and nobody thinks that.
Except
like anybody in the former Senator Bob Bennett from here in Utah. I know his kids. I knew his family back when I was in high school, and apparently when they were both in the Senate together, like Joe Biden and he would talk about religion all the time. Senator Bennett was a devout Mormon, and they would and Joe Biden called him Bishop. He thought that was funny. That was his nickname for him.
Okay.
But they would literally like talk all of the time about religion. Like everybody knows Joe Biden is is a true believing Catholic.
Yeah. Although
maybe the last 3.5 years have shook his faith. I don't know. So only 23% of Republicans polled see Joe Biden as a person of faith.
Is it?
Which is
do they
amazing.
Actually believe that, or is it this weird political impulse that a lot of people have, where they can't say something that they would perceive as positive about the political opponent? Like they just cannot bring themselves. And we know actually my story that I'm going to be getting to talks about how religious Republicans continue to be. Or at least it's one of the details. And it's like, this is a party that is very religious, right? And so like almost universally. And so it's like,
they're not good at religion, but they identify as religious.
Like, is it just that do they have their heads buried in the sand so much that they just can't see it about Joe Biden? Or is it that they just refuse to give him credit for anything because they just loathe him so much?
I mean, I think part of it, I think all of the above, but also like they have been fed a steady stream.
Yeah.
Like we continually play pastors talking about how demonic Joe Biden is and how heavenly and saintly Donald Trump is and so like the especially the extreme right wing in this country has been fed this weird line about who these people are that's so divorced from reality it's absurd, but like that's what they're getting. They in their information bubbles. To the point where there's only 35% of Republicans believed that Mitt Romney is a person of faith. I'm guessing that's a twofold thing. A, he turned his back on Trump a couple times. He voted for impeachment.
Right.
And B, he's not the kind of faith that they like. He's a weirdo faith. He's a Mormon.
Right.
Does that even count? I'm going to say no.
Right.
Oddly, only 38% of Democrats say that Romney is a person of faith. What are we doing here?
I don't get this.
Independents were by far the largest category of people saying he's a person of faith at 42%. I mean, maybe some of this is just skepticism that politicians believe in anything other than like their own power. And, I understand that, I suppose, but still. I
believe Mitt Romney's faith. I believe that he's a person of faith.
Yeah.
Like,
absolutely.
I don't really doubt that one. Like, with what level of confidence would I say? It's really high. It's really, really high. Like, I just don't think that. I just don't think it's a charade there. But again, you have others that you're like, that might be a little bit of an act. What did they say about Mike Lee?
Oh, he didn't come
loathsome human being.
Yeah, I think you have to be a person before you can be a person of faith.
He's a something of faith.
He's a blobfish of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. Like, so like when people were asked about other Republican primary hopefuls, like DeSantis. Among Republicans, only 31% of Republicans believe DeSantis is a person of faith, which is bizarre because he, like, everything he does in Florida, he says, he has a religious spin to it. Every single thing. Tim Scott, only 31%. These are Republicans saying this. Nikki Haley, only 30%.
Wow.
And then Vivek Ramaswamy, that's an interesting one. Only 22% think that.
Really?
Oh, no. It's 30% for Vivek Ramaswamy. That's weird. And then 22% for Chris Christie.
Huh.
I don't know. It's a weird question to ask. Because it's like, we shouldn't be asking people what their opinion of someone else's faith is. Like, that's like, what the hell does it matter what Americans guess is someone's faith? We should just be asking the person if we're asking this question at all.
Right. It's God. Can we please just get religion out of politics? Right. In this country. Like, it just poisons the whole thing so much. All right.
It does. It's true.
Well, Dan, I also have a poll about religion. Huh.
Okay. Weird. On this show?
On this show, Diane.
We seem to be talking about it a lot this week, Frank.
This is from this year, July of this year. Gallup released a poll, or maybe conducted the poll, I don't know, asking Americans if they're religious, spiritual, or whatever, right?
Sure.
Like spiritual but not religious, right?
Right.
So nearly half of Americans still describe themselves as religious at 47%. What's interesting
Okay.
about that number is that 53% of Americans do not describe themselves as religious, which I think is the right spin
very
on this,
interesting,
right? The article is definitely written from this is a problem. These numbers are problematic perspective, because they're trying to put a nice little spin on it. Don't worry, everybody. 33% of people say that they are spiritual but not religious, adding up to 80% of the country. We're still okay. They have some sort of spiritual. They keep talking about connections to the non-physical world, is how the article keeps phrasing it. And I'm like, bleh. 80% still are delusional, I suppose, is what we should really say. Now, an interesting number, and I don't know what to make of it. 2% of respondents said that they are both religious and spiritual, but not religious. So I don't know how that works. Obviously, Americans we're bright.
2% of Americans misunderstand every question that is proposed to them.
I don't know how you're both, but whatever. So that leaves 18% who say they are neither religious nor spiritual. That's us.
That's actually a big deal.
It's a big effing deal. I think we're getting pretty close to having a good number on us atheists and agnostics and non-believers, right?
Yeah.
Because the way that polls that we've talked about previously have framed this is that we've only been able to kind of get a sense of non-belief through this prism of the nuns, right? The none of the aboves, right?
Right.
But the none of the aboves doesn't mean that the people don't fall into this category of spiritual but not religious.
Yeah.
They're just not claiming a religion, right?
If anyone listening to this is a demographer, is someone who is in that realm of like doing polls and stuff and tracking stuff, please reach out to us, because I would like to help craft some of these questions. Because every time I read the questions on polling about religion, I'm like, you're not getting to it.
Right.
You're actually missing it. You have skewed your own results,
right?
Because you're too afraid to ask the actual questions,
right? Yeah, I mean,
or something.
Yeah, I don't know enough about this stuff to jump into that part of it. But that number, 18%, is down 7 percentage points from, well, they say down, I say up.
Right.
7 percentage points. From when they first started asking the question in 1999. So in the 24-year period since then, I guess it's gone from 11% of the country saying that they were neither religious nor spiritual, up to 18%, which is pretty remarkable. The 82% of the country right now that has some sort of spiritual belief system, that's down from 90% in 1999. So that's good stuff. Political parties, it will not surprise anybody that the Republicans are largely religious. 61%. 28% say that they are spiritual, but not religious. Amongst Democrats, spiritual is 41% and religious is down to 37%. Independents were in the middle there. That's not surprising. 21% of both Democrats and independents say they are neither religious nor spiritual, compared to 8% of Republicans. So, and of course, then they do the breakdown by age. Should surprise nobody that young adults with no spiritual or religious belief system is at 26% of the country at this point.
I think one of the problems of this question is that there is no definition for spiritual. That if you ask 20 people who say that they're spiritual what spiritual means, you'll get 20 answers. So what the fuck are we even talking about?
Well, correct. But I think what's important is that we have this 18%. What we know is we have 18% of the country that's saying that they reject those notions. Right. They don't include these however you want to define spiritual. Right.
That's huge. 18% is huge.
18% are saying, no, I don't connect with these like mystical ideas about and magical ideas about the universe. I'm grounded
or
in
whatever definition you're giving to that word. 18% of us are like, nah.
Yeah. So this is 18% of the country who, who aren't walking around smudging sage in their house, right? Who,
unless they just like that smell.
Unless they like the smell.
Why, but
yeah, totally. They're not engaging in these. They're not going to psychics. They're not, presumably, right? They're not getting their fortunes told and la-di-da. Right, because I mean that's what I think a lot of the spiritual but not religious folk are probably up to, right?
Or dancing naked in the moonlight.
Yeah, right. Yeah, like there's a lot, and to be honest,
you can do that without any magical thinking. That's fine.
Spiritual but not religious could still be believing in Jesus. Right,
that's true.
Right, because they're just but I don't go to church. I'm not religious. Yeah, sure, Jesus exists. Whatever. Doesn't really affect me too much. But yeah, sure, Jesus, fine. Right. Like there are plenty of people out there like that. Right. Yep. And I think that's also, I mean, there's going to be a spectrum of that. Then some of them might be like, well, I do religious stuff on my own, and they put themselves like, you're right that these categories are difficult, but the 18%, like I am just holding on to that number because I think it's the best number that we've had in a long time to give us a good sense of like, where we're at as a movement, really. And a lot of these people are not applying the word atheist, right? Some of them are probably applying
they wouldn't
agnostic.
Self-describe as atheist, because atheism atheist has scary connotations and whatever. But yeah, that's I think that's great. I think that's awesome.
Yeah,
18. All right. Well, I'm gonna close us out in Detroit, where a church has been closed down by the authorities.
Okay,
they've been raided by police and closed down just for practicing their religion, which usually doesn't happen in the U.S., but it might if your church is the psychedelic. Oh, sorry, hang on. But it might if your church is the psychedelic church of Detroit.
Oh no.
It is, and they are, they've gone through literally all of the proper motions, all the channels to be a real church, to be listed as a church. And they even went through the process in Detroit of getting a referendum onto a ballot that was voted in decriminalizing the use of psilocybin mushrooms, some magic mushrooms, for their church practices. And yet they were still raided by the police and shut down with big orange stickers placed over the doors so that you can't open them without breaking the sticker and whatever. It's very funny to me. In part, like, I have two responses to it. One of them is the obvious thing, which is that psychedelic mushrooms have been shown to be safer than alcohol in terms of consumption and like what the dangers are of it to the person consuming it and to the people of the community. So it's like, why are we having this conversation? Why is this not just legal all over the country? This is absurd. But also, like, yeah, people, here's the thing. There's a lot of science finally being done on psychedelic mushrooms that's showing real promise in healing trauma, in like depression, anxiety, like a lot of those very kind of prevalent psychological issues in our society. They seem to be really treatable through psychedelics. Like that seems to be very much the case. Like study after study is showing that that's true.
Right.
So there could be like, okay, screw the fact that this is a church and the leader calls himself Shaman Shu and all of this stuff.
Spiritual but not religious. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I just think, and it doesn't even have to be spiritual. It is literally science.
Right.
Like this is useful stuff. I wish that it didn't have. I wish that they didn't have to like be attempting to get religious exemptions to be able to do a thing that actually shows real promise in helping people.
Right.
But if they do, if that is the workaround, at least don't fucking raid them. They've gone out of their way to be actually like compliant with the law, including like getting laws passed. For their part, the police department said that, well, yeah, okay, it's been decriminalized in Detroit, but it's still illegal in the state, and so you can't do it. I think that is so stupid. Everything about it is stupid and infuriating, but yeah, I don't know. This was sent in to us by one of our listeners. Thank you so much. And it's so funny to me that something that has the potential to be actually good. There's so many things that, people claim might do you good, whatever, a lemon cleanse or fucking kombucha or whatever.
Right.
That they make claims about, wild claims about, with literally no science behind it whatsoever. And then something that actually does have science, like increasing amounts of science backing it up. And we can't do it because, Nixon wanted to have a war on drugs or whatever.
Yep.
It's crazy. So anyway, there you go. If you would like to tell us about your spiritual but not religious experience with mushrooms, feel free to write into us, podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. We'd love to hear your voice. The telephone number is 424-666-8442. Stick around. There's more show coming up. Well,
Frank, this is going to come to us from Brother Devin Rogers from the Stronghold Baptist Church in Norcross, Georgia. Oh man, there's racism. I'm trigger warning everybody. This starts with with slavery, with the wrong take on slavery, and gets worse from there. So that's how much fun we're about to have. So yeah, everybody enjoy this.
And you know what? I bet you there's a lot of Africans that if they hadn't have been brought over, not saying it was right, don't misunderstand, not justifying the slavery in the situation, but God, I still believe, used it. And now I'm sure there's a lot of Africans that got the gospel and they're in heaven right now because they got the gospel. You know, what would be better? For them to have lived their entire life in Africa free, doing their voodoo or whatever, and then dying and going to hell, right? Or what happened? And then they go to heaven. They get the opportunity. Now again, it doesn't justify it. The ends do not justify the means, but this is how God works. This is what God does in the Bible. And we have black people in here. I don't think any of you guys were ever slaves. I was never a slave. It's like, white privilege. You were never a slave. You were never living during the time unless you're very old, like 60 or 70 maybe, or 80 years old, you're never even living during a time where segregation was a thing in this country. I mean, what are you crying about? Nothing even happened to you. You're just making up stuff. You can't look at the facts that I was reading and just attribute that to some kind of white privilege. It's not real. Get over it. Quit having all the excuses. Why don't you take some responsibility for your choices? Be content with whatever situation you were born into and make the most of it. God's not limited to your situation. He can do above, what we ask or think.
Well, how about that?
Oh, my God. The ends don't justify the means, Dan. But I guess they kind of do.
That's how God works.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. And then literally saying, I know there are some black people in here. Let me just shit on you for a second. Wow. Pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go on the record and say that white privilege in these United States is real. Kids. That's a legitimate, real thing that happens. And this guy very clearly benefits from it, because there's no reason why this guy should have a pulpit anywhere. Oh man, what a ding dong. All right. We had some beautiful people write into us. I will dive right in. This is from Megan the Okie, who says, "Hey, Frank and Dan, I'm sure others will point this out, but you missed some crucial details when covering the defamation suit of former pastor Johnny Hunt against the SBC. You'll recall, Frank, we talked about this last week, and I talked about the fact that Johnny Hunt was suing them because of privacy issues. And here's the thing. I'll let Megan get to this. His claim is basically that they had no right to disclose his private sins in their investigation report of sexual abuse allegations in the church. You guys were on the fence about it, under the impression that this was just about marital infidelity between two consenting adults. Hypocritical, but still a private matter. However, it was not consensual. It was an allegation of sexual assault that he doesn't even deny occurred. The woman never pressed charges, so I kind of think he just believes he doesn't deserve to be on the list of pedophiles and rapists when he thinks of what he did as just, quote, awkward fondling. But the SBC would need to be knowingly lying for it to even count as defamation, and he isn't even claiming that they lied. Yeah, when I went and looked into this further, literally the article that I was going off of, what I was looking at, did say that it was consensual. It now seems very clear that it was not consensual, and I was misreporting the story. So, my bad. And also, fuck that guy.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
it's a difficult stance to take, but we'll take it.
Yeah, that's a rough one. I'm going way out on a limb in saying that. Larry wrote into us, "Hi, Frank and Dan. A few weeks ago, you two mentioned a pastor who said some concerning things regarding autism. I was diagnosed when I was 11, and at around 19, I was told by the church I attended that it was because of a curse and that it was demonic." Oh my God, Larry.
That's just awful.
"I remember the youth pastor and several others praying over me to cast out the demon of autism, as if it would magically make me cured of it. At 32, I can comfortably say it was all bullshit because I still have it."
Yeah.
Oh my God.
How awful.
It's someone's brain works differently than the majority.
Yeah.
It's just different. There's nothing to cure. It's
right.
You're not diseased. But yet, yeah, good Lord. Way to make somebody feel just the worst. Religion. Way to go. And then it must have made them feel great because, hooray, it worked. I'm not autistic anymore. Good job. Yeah, right. I wonder how they feel after they cast out the demon and the person is very clearly still autistic. Like, what are they thinking at that point? I mean, I'm sure they're just blaming Larry.
Oh yeah, this was
Well,
all
I guess
Larry's
Larry's
fault.
just still sinning too much. He's still. Why are you such a breeding ground for demons, Larry? What are you doing wrong? Oh man. This is Maddie from Texas writes to us, "Hi Frank and Dan. Spectacular news. Pure Words Baptist Church in Houston, Texas will not be allowed to renew their lease in the strip mall where they currently roost. Houston United Front Against Fascism, or HUFAF, that's me just going with the initialism there, has slammed them with a 5.5 months straight of consistent Sunday protests. I'm proud to have attended as many of those protests as I could, and I continue to do so." Maddie mentions that we covered part of the church pastor's profoundly stupid sermons in episode 608. I did not go back and recheck that, but yes. Maddie says, "Known for such hits as, you can't divorce your spouse even if they're an axe murderer." I do remember that one. "If your wife owns pants, burn them." And
wait, the pants or the wife?
Well, that's unclear. It seems possible that either could be
or
be
all
this
of it.
pastor's
Yeah.
solution. Right, yeah. And also, quote, "I pray every homo that exists has a slow, painful death."
Oh.
The loving words of Jesus coming right through
that's lovely.
In that pastor. Yeah, thanks a lot. Pure Words even hosted the infamous Steven Anderson on more than one occasion. The church's lease ends sometime in 2024, and their eviction will rid the area of the cesspool of blatant hate.
But it's just going to go someplace else.
Yeah, probably, but I like that they have to, that they'll have to pull up stakes and figure it out.
Be inconvenienced.
Yeah.
And maybe have a hard time finding a new landlord.
Yeah, and probably have to pay more, and I don't know. Hopefully things go very badly for them. Let's all just pray that everything goes badly. All right. Well, we got some folks to thank. I'll start us off. Thanks so much to Margaret, who is now a deacon in our TGIA priesthood. Thank you so much. You're amazing. Appreciate that. And do you have anybody to thank?
I do, Dan. We have a new patron. I seem to recognize this name, but they're showing up as new. Woke Boomer. So we'll thank you.
All right.
Is now a teacher. So
well done, Woke Boomer.
So thank you very much for supporting the show. If you'd like to join them, you can actually. Just go to our website, thankgodimatheist.com, and click on the support tab. And there's, he'll tell you what to do. And as always, Dan, we have our top donor to thank, our Lord and Savior, Davis.
Hell yeah! More show coming up. Well, Frank, I sent you an article that I found in RNS, Religion News Service, about the new hit video game, Starfield.
Woo! I didn't know you were so into video games, Dan.
I am not.
Okay.
I think you're more of a gamer than I am, actually, at this point.
And that's not saying much.
That's not saying much. But, I've played a little bit of, I've logged some hours on Zelda. The newest Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom, or whatever it's called.
Okay.
That started when I had COVID. I was like, okay, I got nothing else to do. I might as well play the new game that everybody's freaking out about. And then, but Starfield's interesting. It's one of these role-playing games. You are a character who goes and explores space. You go out into the universe and you go to different worlds and you explore.
You do shit.
You do stuff. You meet other beings and whatnot. But one of the things that's interesting about this game is that you are given the option of picking a religion.
Oh.
So you can choose from 3. They have this game only has 3 religions, which seems like in terms of an expansive, huge universe game, 3 seems low in terms of the number of religions, but that's okay. There's the Sanctum Universum, which sees all of reality as holy.
Oh.
Which, to me, if all of reality is holy, then is anything actually holy? If it's all just sort of on the same plane, then what's the difference between holy and not holy? But that's okay. That's a question for someone in the Sanctum Universum. Then you could choose the Enlightened, which believes in, apparently, as RNS describes it, believes in human kindness, but not in God.
Oh.
And then there's House Varun, which is an apocalyptic death cult. Skun-dun-dun.
Okay.
So, the first 2 faiths, you go around and you kind of get along with everybody. And then that last one, you go around shooting everybody. And
right.
And all of the other characters in the game view you with suspicion.
So we know which one of those is actually the fun one to play.
Right? It does seem like that is that feels kind of, who knows?
Yeah.
I always get very hung up on like doing it right. Like, how do you do the game right? And
I don't think that's the point.
The newer games, that's not how they work.
Right.
So
no, you proposed this and I was like, my initial reaction was, well, we're not really gamers. Like, chiming in on the topic, we might be a little out of our element,
out of our depth.
Yeah. But I read the article and there was actually the last line of the article is this quote from one of the people that they talked to. And she says, if I have the choice to join what is basically the Universalist Church of the United Federation of Planets versus a death cult, I'm going to choose the Universalists. And there was something about her intention there that kind of caught my attention of how people play these games and how they sort of don moral characters that they're comfortable with, right? And because a lot of this article is about sort of, the fact that that there are these supposed to be kind of learning moments almost in the game. I don't know if that's the right phrase for it, but these little
philosophical pause to reflect
and
kind of
moral
moments.
Conundrums and what have you, and which is interesting, and I like the overall idea of that. But just sort of knowing the way that I play games and seeing this quote of this person who's kind of entering this world with her moral compass. And I was like, that's actually a really interesting question, because we were joking, before about the death cult sounds like the fun way to play this game. And it makes me think of there was that, obviously very different game, but there was a video game back from the 80s, I think, called Rampage. I don't know. Some of you will have played it, I'm sure, at some point on your Sega or whatever.
Is that the one where you're a monster destroying buildings?
And that's all you do. You just go around and just destroy buildings, right? The destructive or the darker side is always, there's something fun dabbling in that and donning a new sort of persona and playing around. Right. And obviously in a game like this, that could possibly, what I find so interesting about a lot of these games is how powerful some of these moments can actually be for so many people who play them. And it would probably feel for a lot of people wrong to play the death cult and to revel in the destruction that you're introducing into, this universe. Right.
Right.
But I don't know. I kind of want to download this game and go be a death cultist and blow up ships and destroy things.
One of the things that's interesting is that it's it does give you the question of do you want to be do you want this game to be an extension of who you actually are? Do you want it to be like I'm putting me into this world out in space, interacting with these other characters, and what would I do in that situation? Or do you want it to be a fantasy where you get to sort of play out what it might feel like to be the bad guy, what it might feel like to be evil or unfeeling or uncaring about others.
And do you have a pirate's code? Do you follow some sort of do you have a moral compass of some kind still?
It's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I find that I'm bad at the attacky shooty parts of games anyway. So I might avoid it just so that I can keep playing and don't have to get killed all the time.
Yeah. You don't like the first person shooters.
No, that's not.
You want more of a first person feeler or a first person
no, I don't
first person thinker, right? Like
I want to solve puzzles. That's all I really want to do.
Yeah. A first person puzzler.
A puzzler. Puzzle me this. But I do think that one of the reasons I wanted to talk about this is that I think that there's an interesting question about it. I think that there is something sort of good about asking people in our society to think, to ponder on deeper questions. I think there is a societal gain when we all sort of are asking the deeper questions, are pondering, are wondering about like what's best for humanity. And so I think video games are a very interesting place to insert those questions and to sort of have people explore their own morality, their own ethics, their own sense of what is ethical or moral. I don't know that they're doing it right. I like we say, you and I are not people who play too many video games, and so I can't say that they're doing it in a way that I think that would have the societal benefit that I'm talking about. But I do think that there's an interesting potential there for video games to be a platform where people can truly explore their own feelings about ethics. I mean, I know that like did you watch The Last of Us?
Yeah.
Which is based on a video game. So the gamers of the world sort of encountered the ethical question of the rest of us got from the show,
right? From
that last episode.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
I'm not telling what that ethical question is, but there are big ethical questions that happen in the last episode. A big conversation sort of has formed around it. First with the gamers, and now with those who have watched the show. And I think that that's interesting, and I like that that it was so shocking that it did sort of spawn a big conversation. So I think that maybe as we sort of move away from, priests being the ones who tell us what morals look like,
right?
I think pop culture will be an interesting venue for us to explore. I mean, it always has been. The Greeks had theater back in, 1000 BCE that was exploring questions of morality and ethics. I mean, they didn't do great. They didn't do a great job of it.
They were asking the questions, though.
But they were asking the questions, and maybe that is the purpose. Maybe that's where we need to really be turning. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's human, right? Like we do wrestle with big decisions and these moral questions in our lives, and so is religion going to provide it for you? Is philosophy going to provide it for you? Is a video game right? A novel, like there's so many ways to like delve into, you know, the human experience. And that's we create that for each other, right? Through art and unfortunately religion, which always does a really bad job of it. But like this is the human experience, right? Is asking yourself, you know, these questions about right and wrong. And so it makes sense that as you know, any art form, video games would be involved in these same questions. They're, you know, these big expansive games are all about storytelling and this universe creation and whatnot. And so they would be hollow in a lot of ways without some of these questions being explored. So
I think that's interesting. I look forward to seeing what how it evolves and how these questions are injected into these games.
I mean,
as we go forward.
The questions obviously have gotten a little more complicated since, you know, Donkey Kong, you know, where you had no choice. You had to save the princess, right? Or just not play.
Or Rampage or whatever.
Rampage, right. No moral questions were being asked in Rampage. It was just destroy.
Yeah.
Fun game,
those were
though.
The good old days.
I loved that game.
Well, friends at home, if you have thoughts about gaming and the direction of philosophical exploration there within, please feel free to write into us. podcast@thankgodimatheist.com.
Or call and leave us a voicemail message. The telephone number is 424-666-8442.
Yeah, go to the Facebook page, facebook.com/TGIAtheist, and click the like button.
And if you'd like to join one of our members only lounges, you can do so. Go to our website, thankgodimatheist.com/members only.
Yeah. Hey, thanks so much to the Red Rock Hot Club for the use of their music.
And thanks to Gordon Johnston for the use of his music.
And thanks to all y'all for tuning in. We sure do appreciate you.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.